Today, we're telling the story of a truly incredible new therapy. It's one that doesn't just manage symptoms, it goes right to the very root cause of a devastating disease, targeting a single genetic typo.
It really is a question that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, right? But it's at the absolute heart of one of the most exciting new treatments in all of neuroscience. I mean, can you actually find one single faulty genetic instruction inside our bodies and just turn it off? Well, let's get into it.
You know, to really understand the hero of any story, you've got to meet the villain first. And in this story, the villain is a very specific, very aggressive form of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. You know it as ALS. And it's all caused by a mutation in just one gene.
Now, when you look at this chart, it really puts things into perspective. The therapy we're talking about, Qalsody, is unbelievably specific. It only targets what's called SOD1-ALS, which, as you can see, is just about 2% of all ALS cases. It's a tiny slice of a much bigger problem. But for the people in that slice, this is absolutely everything.
And that 2%, it is not just some abstract number. It represents around 500 people in the United States at any one time, every single one of them facing this brutal diagnosis. So this isn't about some massive blockbuster drug. This is about precision medicine for a community that has been desperate for a breakthrough. So what exactly is going on here at the genetic level? Okay, think of your DNA like a giant cookbook full of recipes. The SOD1 gene, that's a recipe for a really important protein that acts like a cellular janitor, cleaning up all sorts of harmful waste. But in SOD1 ALS, there's a typo in that recipe. And that typo creates a toxic version of the protein that, instead of cleaning up, actually poisons the very motor neurons that control our muscles.
And that right there brings us to the hero of our story, Qalsody. The FDA gave it the green light back in 2023, and it's the very first gene therapy designed specifically to fight this form of ALS. It's just a massive leap forward.
So what's its mission? Well, if that faulty gene is the blueprint for a toxic factory, Qalsody's job isn't to just clean up the pollution after the fact. No, it's designed to be much smarter. It sneaks inside and shuts the entire factory down before it can even produce that toxic protein in the first place.
So how in the world does it accomplish this mission? It's through this incredibly elegant and precise mechanism that, honestly, you can only really describe as a molecular ninja attack.
See, Qalsody is a special kind of drug called an antisense oligonucleotide, or an ASO for short. You can just think of it as a tiny, custom-made piece of synthetic DNA. It is engineered with one and only one purpose: to hunt down the specific genetic message coming from that faulty SOD1 gene and neutralize it. Okay, so here's how that ninja attack actually works, broken down into 3 steps. First up is targeting. The ASO molecule travels through the body to find the specific messenger RNA. That's the temporary blueprint that gets copied from the faulty gene. Next comes the chopping. Once our ninja finds its target, it doesn't just block it. No, it recruits an enzyme that acts like a pair of molecular scissors, and it literally slices that blueprint into pieces so the toxic protein can never be built. And finally, delivery. To get this ninja to the right battlefield, the drug is injected directly into the spinal fluid. That gives it a direct highway to the brain and spinal cord, where it needs to do its work. And this quote it nails it. It's a guided missile, not a carpet bomb. It's programmed to destroy only the message from the SOD1 gene. It leaves all the other genes completely alone, which is exactly why it's a treatment just for SOD1 ALS and not other forms of the disease. That incredible precision, that's the whole point.
So the science is unbelievably elegant, right? But the real question is, does it actually work in people? So let's look at the impact. Let's dig into the data from the clinical trials that got this thing approved.
All right, first question. Did it actually shut down the factory? The answer here is a resounding yes. In the main clinical trial, which was called the VALOR study, patients taking Qalsody saw a 35% reduction in that toxic SOD1 protein floating around in their spinal fluid. So check, it was definitely hitting its target.
But, just reducing the protein is only half the battle. The real question is, does that stop the damage to the nerves? To figure this out, scientists looked at something called neurofilament light chain, or NFL. Think of it like a smoke detector for neuron damage. When your neurons are damaged or destroyed, your NFL levels shoot up. And what happened in the study? In patients taking Qalsody, these levels dropped by 50%. This right here, this was the critical piece of evidence that convinced the FDA that the drug was really working.
So, what about the things patients can actually feel, their physical function? Well, here the picture gets a little more nuanced. Patients on the drug did have a slower decline in their overall function, their breathing, and their muscle strength. But, and this is important, those results weren't quite dramatic enough to be called statistically significant in the initial 28-week study. Still, all the trends were clearly pointing in the right direction, and they looked even better in the longer-term follow-ups.
And of course, it's so important to be real about what this treatment actually involves. It means getting a spinal injection every single month. The common side effects are things like pain and fatigue, and there is a rare but serious risk of inflammation in the spinal cord. And maybe one of the most important things to know is that the benefits are not immediate. It can easily take 6 months or even longer to really see an effect. It requires incredible patience and commitment from patients and their families.
But here's the thing. The story of Qalsody is so much bigger than just this one drug for this one rare disease. Its approval has kicked open the door to an entirely new frontier for how we research and treat all sorts of neurodegenerative disorders.
I mean, this slide really shows you what a fundamental shift we're talking about. The old way of developing drugs for diseases like ALS meant you had to wait years just to see if a treatment slowed down physical decline. It was a painfully slow process. But the Qalsody way proves we can use biomarkers, like that NFL smoke detector, to get much faster answers about whether a drug is working. This is an absolute game changer, and it promises to speed up the entire drug development pipeline. And look, this isn't just a theory. We are already seeing this new blueprint in action. Qalsody's success has paved the way for other similar ASO drugs that are targeting different genetic forms of ALS, like one called C9orf72. And what's even more revolutionary is the ATLAS trial. This study is testing Qalsody in people who carry the gene but have 0 symptoms to see if it can stop the disease before it ever even starts. The results for that are due in 2027, and they could literally change everything.
So in the end, Qalsody is way more than just a treatment. It's a proof of concept. It's a blueprint for how to silence rogue genes. So the question is no longer if we can do it, but where can we apply this blueprint next? Could we send similar gene-silencing ninjas to fight Huntington's, or Alzheimer's, or frontotemporal dementia? That is the hopeful new frontier this one drug has helped to open up for all of us.